A little while ago, I was asked to do a video talking about the caged system for the guitar, specifically how it applies to the 8th string and if it's useful. Now, the cage system is something that I am aware of and know how it works, but it was not something that I learned when I was first learning the guitar, meaning I didn't learn my fretboard using that system. So I wanted to do a little bit more research to get some ideas to see if it will be useful for the 8th string guitar, and if it can teach us anything that maybe some other methods of learning would not. So quickly, what is the caged system? The caged system is a way of organizing the fretboard on the guitar using 5 of the basic open chord shapes: C, A, G, E, and D, hence the name caged. When you sequence these 5 chords on the fretboard, it reveals certain relations about positions, chords, notes, and intervals on the frets. I'm not going to do a full deep dive explaining this topic, but I'll link some useful videos I found in the description below if you're curious about learning more. So what is this system good for? Well, firstly, it uses 5 very basic chords, kind of the first chords that people will learn when they pick up a guitar, in order to create deeper understanding of the fretboard. And in doing that, it creates a very low barrier of entry for people to expand their knowledge. The other good thing about this system of thinking is that it correctly recognizes that in order to know your way around the fretboard, you have to know melodic and harmonic relationships between notes, not simply individual note names and where they fall on the fretboard. Knowing the relationships allows us to easily access notes and chords in different contexts and different playing situations, whereas if you only know a note name and where it falls, like what fret and what string it's on, it can be harder to pull up that knowledge in the moment of playing music. So where does caged fail for some people? I've heard many anecdotes that people have a hard time understanding its usefulness when they first come across it. Similar to when people encounter the circle of fifths, they seem to read and understand that there is a lot of potential in using that tool, but they're not really sure its usefulness to them. It's kind of like being handed a book of formulas and not being told what to do with them. Another small complaint that I have about the system is that I think it tries to simplify things just a little bit too much. By basing everything on these 5 basic chord shapes, it kind of ignores the fact that other chord qualities exist, like minor, 4-part chords, 5-part chords, diminished chords, augmented chords, etc. And while people who believe in the system will say that those chords all exist within these shapes and can be found and extrapolated, I think that's just a little bit too much work to expect from the user. Now, the system technically is based in triads, but it creates an extra step for us to get there by starting with chord shapes and not just cutting directly to the chase and explaining what triads are and how they create our chord shapes. Triads lead to chord shapes, not the other way around, so it can be a little bit confusing to have to work backwards. And then it also, again, assumes that extra step of work for the user. So to our main question of the video, is the cage system useful on the 8th string guitar? Well, it should go without saying that it still works as intended if we use the open strings chords on the top 6 strings, and we just ignore string 7 and 8. Using these chord shapes, you can still then draw those connections to the different fretboard areas and find some intervallic connections, connect roots, and all sorts of things. And if you're somebody who's already done a lot of work using cage and you've already kind of expanded your knowledge of the fretboard and understand it through the system, I think it would be easy enough to extend that knowledge to include strings 7 and 8, because you would probably have an understanding of triad shapes and areas of the fretboard already, and from that you can just keep going with that thought process. However, if you have not already put a lot of work into learning using the cage system, I cannot recommend it as a useful tool for you if you're looking to expand your knowledge of the fretboard. I think there are a lot of other ways we can think about the frets and the notes and chords that does not rely on these open string chords, which are a little bit more useful for a 6th string guitar than 8. The cage system is useful because it assumes we already know some basic chords and then we can extrapolate from those. But with the popularity of the 8th string guitar growing, I expect more and more people to be jumping straight onto this instrument and not starting on 6th string first. And in my opinion, I don't think the first best step on an 8th string guitar is going to be learn your basic open string chords. Instead, I think developing an understanding of triad shapes and how they connect across the fretboard is going to be a much more direct and to the point way of learning your neck. But now I would love to hear from you. Let me know in the comments down below if you have learned using the cage system, what you got from it, maybe some difficulties you had while learning from it, and do you think it will be useful on the 8th string guitar? How can it be applied? Maybe there's a clever way I didn't think of that would make it super relevant for this instrument. But that's it for me on this subject today. If you want to go more in depth into some of these topics, you can sign up for lessons with me down at the email in the description below. And if you want to support the channel, I'll put that link down there as well. So wherever you are in the world, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and as always, happy practicing.